On a winter morning when snow blanketed the city of North Haven in thick white silence, Daniel Frost had one simple plan: pick up his fare, drop them off, and get home quickly to his 7-year-old daughter, whose asthma always worsened in the cold. But in the frozen parking lot of the Grand Harbor Hotel, he found a bride in a wedding gown, mascara streaming down her face, shivering in the falling snow. She begged him to take her away from her wedding. Daniel didn't know that one decision in that snowstorm would change his entire life and reveal the secrets of a billionaire running from her own fate. Daniel Frost woke at 5:47 a.m. to the sound of the radiator clanking. Not heating, just clanking. The apartment was cold enough that he could see his breath when he sat up in bed. 38 years old, widowed for 3 years, working as a contract driver for anyone who'd pay cash. He pulled on 2 sweaters and padded quietly down the narrow hallway of their rental apartment. Through the half-open door of the second bedroom, he could hear it, that faint wheeze that meant Mia's lungs were struggling again. Daniel eased the door open. His daughter was curled under 3 blankets, her small chest rising and falling with that telltale catch. On the nightstand sat her inhaler. The prescription label faded from use. He'd need to refill it soon. That meant another $70 he didn't quite have. He crouched beside her bed and gently brushed the dark hair from her forehead. Mia stirred, her hazel eyes fluttering open. "Hey, sweetheart," Daniel whispered. "How are you breathing?" "Okay, Daddy." Her voice was small, scratchy, just tight. "Let's do a puff before I leave for work, all right?" He helped her sit up, positioning the inhaler. 1 breath. 2. The medicine hissed. Mia coughed once, then settled back into her pillows. "Mrs. Chen from next door will check on you in an hour," Daniel said. "You have her number by the phone, right?" Mia nodded. She was used to this routine. Too used to it. 7 years old and already understanding that her father had to work, that money was always tight, that winter was the enemy. Daniel kissed her forehead. "I'll be back by noon." Outside, the snow had started falling again. Fat, heavy flakes that muffled the sounds of the city waking up. Daniel's breath plumed white as he scraped ice off the windshield of his aging sedan. The car had 190,000 miles on it and a check engine light that had been glowing for 6 months. But it ran. And that was enough. His phone buzzed with a text from the dispatch service. "Short ride. North Haven Grand Hotel. Cash fare. $200. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. $200 for a hotel pickup? That would cover Mia's medicine and maybe fix the radiator. He typed back quickly. "On my way." 20 minutes later, he pulled into the circular drive of the Grand Harbor Hotel. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where doormen wore white gloves and knew your name. Daniel had never been inside a place like this. He barely felt comfortable idling in the passenger loading zone. He texted the number from dispatch. "Here. Black sedan." The response came immediately. "Back parking lot." Odd, but Daniel didn't question it. Cash fares often came with quirks. He circled around to the rear of the hotel, where the parking lot stretched empty, except for a few expensive cars dusted with snow. And there, near the edge of the lot, stood a woman in a wedding dress. Daniel's first thought was that he'd made a mistake. This couldn't be his fare. But the woman turned when she heard his car, and even from 30 feet away, he could see the desperation in her eyes. He put the car in park and stepped out slowly. "Ma'am, did you call for a ride?" The bride nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. Her dress was exquisite layers of silk and lace that probably cost more than Daniel made in a year, but it offered no protection against the cold. Her veil had come partially loose, hanging askew. Her makeup, once perfect, was now streaked down her cheeks in dark rivulets. She was maybe 32, with auburn hair pinned up in an elaborate style that was starting to collapse. Her eyes were green and red-rimmed from crying. "Yes," she said, her voice hoarse. "I called. I need to leave. Please." Daniel glanced back at the hotel. Through the large windows, he could see movement inside, people in formal wear, flowers, the unmistakable setup of a wedding about to happen. "Your wedding is in there," he said carefully. "Are you sure you want to? I can't go back in." The words came out in a rush, almost a gasp. "I can't marry him. I thought I could. I thought this was what I was supposed to do. But I was standing in that bridal suite, looking at myself in the mirror, and I realized," her voice cracked. "This is a cage. A golden cage, but still a cage." Snow fell harder, settling on her bare shoulders. She was shaking now, whether from cold or fear or both. Daniel had been a driver long enough to see people in crisis. Drunks, people fleeing bad dates, someone escaping an abusive relationship once. He'd learned to read desperation. This woman wasn't drunk, she wasn't high. She was terrified. "What do you want to do?" he asked quietly. The bride, Elena, he would learn later, went completely still. Her eyes locked onto his face. "No one has ever asked me that," she whispered. "Everyone tells me what I should do, what's expected, what's best for the company, the family, the future. No one has ever asked what I want." Daniel kept his voice steady. "I'm asking now." Elena's face crumpled. A sob broke from her throat, then another. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to contain it, but the tears came harder. "I want to breathe," she said finally. "I want to feel like myself again. I want to not be someone's acquisition." Behind them, a door to the hotel opened. A man's voice called out, "Elena, what are you doing out here?" Elena's entire body went rigid. "Please," she breathed. "Please, I'll pay whatever you want. Just drive, now." Daniel made a decision. Later, he'd wonder about it. Wonder if he'd been crazy, if he'd just upended his life for a stranger in a parking lot. But in that moment, with snow falling and a woman looking at him with eyes that said, "Save me," there was only one choice. He opened the passenger door. "Get in." Elena didn't hesitate. She grabbed handfuls of her dress and dove into the car, pulling the layers of fabric in after her. Daniel was already back in the driver's seat, putting the car in gear. "Elena!" The man from the hotel was running now, his dress shoes slipping on the snow-covered pavement. Daniel pressed the accelerator. The sedan's tires spun for a second, then caught. They shot forward out of the parking lot, onto the side street, and into the growing snowstorm. In the passenger seat, Elena was crying and laughing at the same time, her hands pressed to her face. "I can't believe I just did that," she gasped. "I can't believe, oh God. What did I just do?" "You got in a car," Daniel said, keeping his eyes on the increasingly snow-covered road. "Everything else, we'll figure out." Daniel drove without direction for the first 10 minutes, just putting distance between them and the hotel. The snow was falling harder now, the kind of heavy, wet snow that made everything white and muffled. The city looked like it was being erased. Elena sat in the passenger seat, breathing hard, like she'd just run a marathon. Her hands were shaking. She kept looking at the side mirror, as if expecting to see someone following them. "Where do you want to go?" Daniel asked. "I don't know." Elena's voice was small. "I don't. I have nowhere to go. Family? Friends?" She laughed bitterly. "My mother helped plan this wedding." She picked the flowers, the menu, the guest list. "She told me I was being dramatic when I said I wasn't sure about Victor. My friends?" She paused. "Most of my friends are business associates, or they work for companies that work with my company. Everyone I know has a stake in this wedding happening." Daniel processed that. The designer dress, the fancy hotel, the way she said my company like it was a given that she owned one. "Who's Victor?" he asked. "Victor Hale." Elena's jaw tightened. "He's the CEO of Hale Ventures. Our companies have been connected for years. Mergers, acquisitions, board seats. When he proposed, Everyone said it made perfect sense. A power couple, strategic alignment. She turned to look at Daniel. He proposed during a board meeting, in front of 40 people, with a ring that belonged to his grandmother. Romantic, Daniel said dryly. I said yes because saying no would have been complicated. And then everything moved so fast. Engagement party, venue booking, invitations. It was like being on a train with no brakes. She wiped at her eyes, smearing what was left of her makeup. This morning, my mother came into the bridal suite. She told me I looked beautiful. Then she said, "Now you'll finally be settled. Now the company will have the stability it needs. Not, are you happy? Not, do you love him? Just stability." Daniel was quiet for a moment. He thought about his own wedding. 9 years ago. A small ceremony in a park, with folding chairs and potluck food. His wife, Lila, had worn a simple white dress she'd found at a thrift store. No one had mentioned stability or strategy. They'd just loved each other. "I'm sorry," he said. Elena looked at him. "For what?" "That no one asked if you were happy." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. She turned away, pressing her forehead against the cold window. Daniel's phone buzzed in the cup holder. He glanced down and saw Mrs. Chen's name. His stomach dropped. "I need to take this," he said, pulling over into a parking lot. "1 second. Daniel?" Mrs. Chen's voice was tight with worry. "Mia is having trouble breathing." "Bad trouble. I gave her the inhaler twice, but she's getting worse. I think we need to call 911, Daniel said immediately. "I'm on my way." He ended the call and sat frozen for a second, his mind racing. Mia. Hospital. He needed to get home. Now. "What's wrong?" Elena asked. "My daughter. She has asthma." He couldn't finish the sentence. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Elena sat up straighter. "Where is she?" "My apartment." 20 minutes from here, but with this snow. "Drive," Elena said firmly. "Right now. Take me with you." Daniel turned to stare at her. "You don't have to. I'm not leaving you alone for this. Drive." Something in her voice, the absolute certainty. The command made Daniel put the car back in gear. He drove faster than he should have, the tires sliding slightly on turns, his heart hammering. Behind him, he could hear Elena on her phone, her voice crisp and businesslike. "Yes, this is Elena Cross. I need an ambulance sent to." She looked at Daniel. He gave it. "Pediatric respiratory emergency. 7-year-old with asthma." "Yes, I'll hold." Daniel's mind was spinning too fast to process the name she'd just given. Cross. Elena Cross. Why did that sound familiar? They reached his apartment building in 15 minutes. Daniel was out of the car and running before he'd even fully stopped. He could hear the siren in the distance. Elena's call had worked. Mrs. Chen had the apartment door open. Inside, Mia was sitting on the couch, her face pale, her lips faintly blue. She was breathing in short, desperate gasps, her small shoulders heaving. "Daddy," she wheezed. Daniel was on his knees in front of her instantly, hands on her face. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. The ambulance is coming. You're going to be okay." Behind him, he heard footsteps. Elena had followed him in, still in her wedding dress, snowflakes melting in her hair. "Mia, honey, look at me," Elena said, her voice calm and warm. "We're going to get you feeling better, okay? Can you sit up a little straighter for me? Good girl." She positioned Mia more upright, easing her breathing slightly. Then she took Daniel's hand and guided it to Mia's back. "Rub here, gentle circles. It helps." She met his eyes. "My younger brother had severe asthma. I know this is terrifying, but she's going to be okay. The ambulance is almost here." And she was right. 2 minutes later, paramedics were in the apartment, lifting Mia onto a gurney, putting an oxygen mask over her small face. Daniel climbed into the ambulance with her, holding her hand. Elena stood in the doorway of the apartment, snow-dusted and incongruous, and called out, "Which hospital?" "North Haven Memorial," one of the paramedics said. "I'll be right behind you." 6 hours later, Daniel sat in a plastic chair in the pediatric wing of North Haven Memorial, his head in his hands. Mia was stable, asleep, breathing normally with the help of nebulizer treatments and steroids. The doctor had said she'd need to stay overnight for observation, maybe 2 nights depending on how she responded. Daniel had never felt so exhausted in his life. Here, he looked up. Elena stood in front of him, holding 2 cups of coffee from the hospital cafeteria. She'd found a blanket somewhere and wrapped it around her shoulders over the wedding dress. Her hair was down now, falling in loose waves. Without the makeup and the elaborate styling, she looked younger, tired, real. "Thank you," Daniel said, taking the coffee. "For everything." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Elena sat down next to him. "Is she okay?" "They think so. Her oxygen levels are back to normal. They want to keep her for observation, make sure there's no relapse." He took a sip of the coffee. "It was terrible, but it was hot. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. The ambulance alone is probably. It's covered," Elena said quietly. Daniel turned to look at her. "What?" "I called while you were with Mia. It's taken care of. The ambulance, the hospital stay, the medications, all of it. You can't just—" "I can." "And I did." She met his eyes. "You saved my life today, Daniel. Let me do this. I didn't save your life. I just drove a car. You asked me what I wanted. You gave me a choice when no one else would. That's saving a life." She looked down at her hands. "And then you brought me with you to take care of your daughter, even though I'm a complete stranger who disrupted your entire day. Most people would have dumped me at a corner and forgotten about me. I wouldn't have done that." "I know. That's why I'm here." They sat in silence for a moment. The hospital hummed around them, distant beeping. The squeak of shoes on linoleum. Hushed conversations. "Elena Cross," Daniel said slowly. "I've heard that name." Elena's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shuddered. "Probably. My family owns Cross Industries. Manufacturing, real estate, some tech holdings. We're on various lists. You're a billionaire. My family is. I'm the CEO and largest individual shareholder. Does that change things?" Daniel thought about it. The wedding dress. The desperation in the parking lot. The way she'd handled the emergency with Mia like it was the most natural thing in the world. "No," he said. "You're still someone who was running from something awful. That doesn't change." Elena's shoulders relaxed slightly. Victor wanted to merge the companies. That's what this was really about. He'd get control of Cross Industries' board. I'd get, I don't know, a mansion? A title? He never asked what I wanted. "What do you want?" There was that question again. Elena turned to face him fully. "I want to build things that matter. Real things, not just profit margins. I want to wake up and feel like myself, not like a portfolio in a designer suit. I want," she stopped, laughed a little. "I want to sit in a hospital with bad coffee and talk to someone who treats me like a person. You are a person. I forget that sometimes." Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. "How is Mia? Need anything?" He texted back. "Stable. We're staying overnight. Thank you for everything." "You should get some rest," Elena said, noticing his exhaustion. "There's a recliner in Mia's room. I can sit with her if you want to close your eyes for a bit." "You don't have to." "I want to." They went back to Mia's room together. The little girl was sleeping soundly now, her breathing even. The monitors beeped steadily. Elena settled into the chair by the bed, and Daniel took the recliner in the corner. He meant to stay awake, meant to keep watch, but exhaustion pulled him under. When he woke 2 hours later, Elena was still there. She'd found a children's book on the windowsill and was reading it quietly to herself, her lips moving slightly with the words. The snow outside had stopped falling. The world was white and quiet. For the first time in 3 years since Leela died, Daniel's apartment felt less like a place he was just surviving in and more like a place where something good might happen. The hospital released Mia the next evening with a new prescription, a follow-up appointment, and strict instructions about avoiding cold air. Daniel carried his daughter to the car, Elena walking beside them with the pharmacy bag. "Can Miss Elena come to our house?" Mia asked, her voice still a little rough. Daniel glanced at Elena, uncertain. "She probably has places to be, sweetheart." "Actually," Elena said carefully, "I don't. If it's okay with you, I could. I could help. Just for tonight. Make sure Mia's comfortable." Daniel wanted to say no, wanted to maintain the boundary between his world and hers. But Mia was looking at Elena with such hope, and he was so tired, and Elena looked like she needed somewhere safe to land. "Okay," he said. "Just for tonight." The apartment was cold when they arrived. The radiator was still broken. Daniel swore under his breath and immediately grabbed the space heater from his bedroom, setting it up in Mia's room. "I'll get the landlord out here tomorrow," he muttered, adjusting the settings. Elena looked around the small apartment. It was clean but worn. Furniture from thrift stores. Cracks in the ceiling that had been there when Daniel moved in. But there were also drawings on the refrigerator, a shelf full of library books, a purple blanket on the couch that Leela had crocheted years ago. It was a home. "I'll make dinner," Elena said suddenly. Daniel turned. "You cook?" "I used to. Before everything got complicated." She moved toward the small kitchen. "Let me try." Daniel set Mia up on the couch with her nebulizer and a cartoon on the old TV. Then he joined Elena in the kitchen, watching as she opened cabinets, assessing what was available. Pasta, canned tomatoes, some frozen vegetables, and she pulled out a box of crackers. "We can make this work." They cooked together in the narrow kitchen, moving around each other carefully. Elena was surprisingly competent with a knife. She chopped vegetables while Daniel boiled water. They didn't talk much, but the silence was comfortable. When dinner was ready, simple pasta with tomato sauce and steamed vegetables, they ate together at the small table. Mia sat between them, eating slowly, her color better than it had been in days. "This is good," Mia said. "Like a restaurant." Elena smiled. "Thank you. I learned from my grandmother." Before she stopped, then continued more softly. "Before things changed, after dinner, Daniel gave Mia her medication and put her to bed. He read her 3 chapters of a book about a girl who could talk to animals. By the time he finished, Mia was asleep, breathing easily. He found Elena standing at the living room window, looking out at the snow-covered street. She'd wrapped herself in Lila's purple blanket. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "My phone has 87 missed calls. 63 text messages. My mother has left 9 voicemails. Victor has called 20 times." She turned to face him. "Everyone wants to know where I am. No one has asked if I'm okay. Are you okay?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. I feel like I just jumped off a cliff, and I'm still falling, and I don't know if there's ground or just more air." Daniel understood that feeling. After Lila died, he'd felt like that for months, falling without landing. Waiting for the crash. "You'll find the ground," he said. "It might not be where you expected, but you'll find it." "How do you know?" "Because you already jumped. The hardest part is over." Elena wiped her eyes. "Can I stay tonight? On your couch?" "I know it's asking a lot, but I can't go back yet. I'm not ready." Daniel thought about all the reasons to say no. The complications, the questions people would ask, the gap between their worlds. But he looked at this woman who'd stayed in a hospital all night, who'd cooked dinner for his daughter, who'd fled a golden cage and was now standing in his tiny apartment wrapped in a blanket his dead wife had made, and he couldn't turn her away. "You can stay," he said, "as long as you need." Daniel woke to the smell of pancakes. He sat up on his bed, disoriented. Sunlight was streaming through the window, making the snow outside glow. He could hear voices in the kitchen, Mia's high laugh and Elena's lower murmur. He pulled on a sweatshirt and walked out to find Elena at the stove, flipping pancakes, while Mia sat at the table in her pajamas, coloring. "Daddy!" Mia called. "Miss Elena is making chocolate chip pancakes." Elena turned, smiling. She was wearing a pair of Daniel's sweatpants rolled up several times at the waist and one of his old college t-shirts. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the bride from 2 days ago. She looked like she belonged here. "I hope you don't mind," Elena said. "I found the ingredients in the pantry. I don't mind." Daniel's voice was rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. That's really nice of you." They ate breakfast together. The three of them crowded around the small table. Mia talked about her favorite books and asked Elena questions about everything. Did she have pets? What was her favorite color? Had she ever been to the ocean? Elena answered patiently, and Daniel noticed how she lit up when talking about things she actually cared about. She told Mia about her grandmother's garden, about learning to paint when she was young, about the summer she spent in Italy studying art restoration. "Why did you stop?" Mia asked. "I had to take over the company," Elena said simply. "My father got sick. Someone needed to step up, so I did." "But you didn't want to?" Elena met Daniel's eyes across the table. "No one asked me what I wanted." After breakfast, Mia wanted to show Elena her room. Daniel watched them disappear down the hallway, Mia chattering excitedly. He started clearing the dishes, his mind churning. This couldn't last. Elena had a life, a company, responsibilities that went beyond his small apartment. She'd have to go back eventually. And when she did, Mia would be heartbroken. He was loading the dishwasher when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Frost? We need to arrange a meeting regarding her situation with Victor Hale and the canceled wedding." Daniel's stomach dropped. "How did you get this number?" "Miss Cross provided it." "Is she available?" Daniel walked to Mia's room. Elena was sitting on the floor, helping Mia build a tower with blocks. She looked up when he appeared. "Your lawyer is on the phone," Daniel said. Elena's expression shifted, the lightness draining away. She stood, brushed off her borrowed sweatpants, and took the phone. "Diane." "Yes, I understand." "No, I'm not coming back today. I need more time." A pause. "That's not my concern right now. Handle it." She ended the call and handed the phone back to Daniel. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Victor is threatening to sue for breach of contract. Apparently the wedding had financial agreements attached that I'm now violating by not showing up." She laughed bitterly. Even the wedding was a business transaction. "What are you going to do?" Elena looked back at Mia, who was still building her tower, humming softly. "I'm going to stay here a little longer." If that's okay. It wasn't just okay. It was exactly what Daniel wanted. But he needed to be realistic. "Elena, you can't hide here forever. You have a company, people depending on you." "I know." She touched his arm lightly. "But I can hide here for one more day. Let me have one more day where I'm just me. Not Elena Cross, CEO. Not Victor's runaway bride. Just someone making pancakes and building towers." Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the practical problems. But he looked at her face, the hope mixed with fear, and he couldn't do it. "One more day," he agreed. They spent the afternoon playing board games with Mia, reading books, watching the snow fall outside. It was the most normal day Daniel had experienced in years. Elena laughed more than he'd seen anyone laugh in his apartment. She was good with Mia, patient and playful. At one point, Mia asked the question Daniel had been dreading. "Miss Elena, are you going to stay with us?" Elena knelt down to Mia's level. "I have to go back to my work soon, honey, but I've loved being here with you and your dad. Will we see you again?" Elena glanced at Daniel, uncertain. He didn't know how to answer either. "I hope so," Elena said finally. "I really hope so." That night, after Mia was in bed, Daniel and Elena sat on the couch together, the purple blanket stretched across both of them. "I need to tell you something," Elena said quietly. "I looked up the hospital bill. I saw what it cost. That's not pocket change, even for me. You must have been terrified about how to pay for it. I was planning to set up a payment plan. Work extra shifts. You shouldn't have to choose between your daughter's health and financial ruin. That's just how it is for people like me. It shouldn't be." Elena turned to face him fully. "What if I told you I want to change that? What if I told you that sitting in that hospital made me realize how broken the system is, and I have the resources to actually do something about it? I'd say you sound like someone who cares. I do care. I forgot that I did, but I do." She took his hand. "Being here, with you and Mia, reminded me why I wanted to run my company in the first place. Not to make profits or close deals or please shareholders. To actually help people. To build things that matter." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Then go do it." "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of going back and turning into that person again. The one who says yes to everything. Who forgets to ask herself what she wants." "You won't," Daniel said firmly. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, watching the snow fall outside, neither of them saying what they both knew. This moment was ending. The real world was coming back. The next morning, the news broke. Daniel saw it first when he checked his phone. The headlines were everywhere. "Runaway bride. Elena Cross cancels billion-dollar wedding. Cross Industries heiress disappears days before Hale merger. Where is Elena Cross?" He showed Elena the phone screen. She read the articles without expression, her face carefully blank. "It's starting," she said. Within an hour, there were reporters outside Daniel's apartment building. Not many. This wasn't a celebrity scandal. Just a business world curiosity, but enough that Mrs. Chen called to ask what was happening. Elena's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her mother, the board, lawyers. Finally, she answered one call. "Mother." "Yes, I'm safe. No, I'm not coming home right now. Because I need space. Because I don't want to marry Victor. Because..." She closed her eyes. "Because I matter more than a merger." And it took running away in a wedding dress to realize that. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. "They want me to come to an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow at 10. They're threatening to replace me as CEO if I don't show up." "Can they do that?" Daniel asked. "If they get enough votes, yes. I'm the largest shareholder, but not a majority. Victor has allies on the board. If they argue that I'm unfit, that I'm unstable, they could force me out." "You're not unstable. You're the sanest person I've met." Elena smiled weakly. "Try explaining that to a room full of executives who think running from your wedding is erratic behavior." Mia appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. "Are you leaving, Miss Elena?" Elena opened her arms. Mia ran into them, and Elena held her tight. "I have to, sweetie. But I'm going to come back and visit. I promise. Do you have to go right now?" "Soon. Very soon." Daniel watched them, his chest tight. He'd known this was coming, had tried to prepare himself, but seeing Elena hold his daughter, seeing Mia's face crumple with disappointment, made it real in a way that hurt. Elena stood, carrying Mia to the couch. She sat down with the little girl in her lap. "Mia, I need to tell you something important. Sometimes grown-ups have to do hard things even when they don't want to. I have a company with a lot of people depending on me. If I don't show up, they might lose their jobs. So I have to go back and fight for them." "Like a superhero?" Mia asked. Exactly like that. But I need you to remember something. You and your dad helped me remember how to be brave. When I was scared, you showed me that it's okay to ask for help. That's a superpower too. Daniel had to look away. His eyes were burning. 2 hours later, a car arrived. Not just any car, a black SUV with a driver in a suit. Elena had called her assistant, who'd arranged everything. There were clothes waiting for her at her apartment. The board meeting was scheduled. The lawyers were ready. She stood in Daniel's doorway, back in her borrowed sweatpants one last time, and looked at him. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You don't have to. I want to see you again, both of you. When this settles down, we'd like that." She kissed his cheek, then Mia's forehead, and walked out to the waiting car. Daniel and Mia watched from the window as she drove away. "Daddy," Mia said quietly, "is Miss Elena going to be okay?" "I hope so, sweetheart. Are we going to see her again?" Daniel didn't know how to answer. Their worlds were too different. She was Elena Cross, CEO and billionaire. He was Daniel Frost, single dad struggling to pay his bills. The time they'd shared had been a bubble, separate from reality. But he'd seen the way she looked at him, the way she'd fit into their small life, the way she'd chosen to stay. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I hope so." The Cross Industries headquarters was a glass tower in downtown North Haven, all sharp angles and reflected light. Elena walked through the lobby in a tailored navy suit, her hair professionally styled, her makeup perfect. She looked every inch the CEO. Inside, she felt like the woman in the parking lot, shaking in her wedding dress. The emergency board meeting was set in the top-floor conference room. Elena arrived precisely at 10 o'clock. 16 board members were already seated around the long table. At the head sat Victor Hale, looking calm and collected in a charcoal suit. "Elena," he said, his voice smooth, "so glad you could join us." She took her seat without responding. Her assistant, Marcus, handed her a folder of documents. She'd spent the previous evening reviewing every contract, every agreement, every legal tie between Cross Industries and Hale Ventures. "Let's begin," said Bernard Hayes, the board chairman. "Miss Cross, you've caused quite a disruption. The board is concerned about your recent behavior and its impact on the company's reputation and partnerships." "My recent behavior," Elena repeated calmly, "was canceling my wedding. That's a personal decision, not a business one." "When your personal decisions affect billion-dollar deals," Victor interjected, "they become business decisions." Elena turned to look at him directly. "The only reason my wedding affected business deals is because you made it part of business deals. You attached merger agreements to a marriage proposal. That was your choice, not mine. A choice you agreed to when you said yes. I said yes to a marriage proposal, not a hostile takeover disguised as romance." Murmurs around the table. Victor's jaw tightened. "The fact remains," Bernard said, "that Cross Industries is now facing financial uncertainty because of your actions. Hale Ventures is reconsidering several partnerships. Investors are nervous. We need to discuss succession planning and possibly interim leadership. You want to replace me as CEO." Elena kept her voice level. "Because I called off my wedding. Because you've demonstrated erratic judgment," Victor said. "Running away without warning. Disappearing for days. Ignoring all communication. I answered my phone. I spoke with our legal team. I made sure all critical operations continued without interruption." Elena opened her folder. "I've reviewed every contract between our companies. Nowhere does it state that my personal relationship with you is tied to business obligations. Those merger discussions were in progress before the engagement and can continue independently." Unless she paused, letting the implication hang. "Unless you were using the wedding as leverage to force deals that couldn't stand on their own merit." The room went very quiet. "Are you accusing me of bad faith negotiations?" Victor's voice was sharp now. "I'm stating facts. You told me you loved me. You told the board the merger was about strategic alignment." Which was true. Victor stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Bernard, clearly Miss Cross is not in a state to lead this company. I move for an immediate vote on interim leadership. Seconded, said Patricia Kim, one of Victor's allies. Elena remained seated, calm. She'd expected this. Before we vote, she said, I have a proposal. Cross Industries will proceed with operational improvements that increase our market position independently. We'll develop new partnerships not dependent on personal relationships. We'll refocus on innovation rather than acquisitions. And I'll prove, over the next quarter, that this company doesn't need to be absorbed by Hale Ventures to succeed. And if you can't prove that, Bernard asked, then I'll step down voluntarily. But I won't be forced out because I chose my own happiness over a business deal disguised as a marriage. She stood, gathering her papers. This company was built by my grandfather with the belief that business should serve people, not the other way around. I forgot that. But I remember now, and I'm going to lead Cross Industries in that direction, with or without this board's approval. She walked out of the conference room. Behind her, she could hear raised voices, arguments beginning. Marcus caught up with her at the elevator. That was either brilliant or career suicide. Elena smiled. Maybe both. 3 weeks later, the annual North Haven Winter Gala took place at the Grand Harbor Hotel, the same hotel where Elena had run from her wedding. She hadn't wanted to attend. But Cross Industries was a major sponsor, and her absence would be noticed. So she put on a silver dress, styled her hair, and prepared to face the social battlefield. What she didn't expect was to see Daniel there. He was standing near the edge of the ballroom, looking profoundly uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. Next to him stood Mrs. Chen, wearing a gold dress and looking equally out of place. Elena crossed the room immediately. "Daniel? What are you doing here?" He turned, relief flooding his face. Mrs. Chen got invited through her church group. They do volunteer work with one of the charities being honored tonight. She didn't want to come alone. And he smiled sheepishly. "I hoped I might see you. You cleaned up nice," Elena said, taking in the suit. "It's borrowed, and I'm pretty sure I'm wearing it wrong. You look perfect." They stood there smiling at each other while the party swirled around them, neither quite sure what to say next. 3 weeks apart, Elena had thought about him every day, wondered if he'd thought about her, wondered if what they'd shared was real or just a moment of crisis that had bound them temporarily. "How's Mia?" Elena asked. "Good, really good. The new medication is working better. She asks about you every day. I've wanted to visit, but things have been insane. I've been following the news. You've been busy, trying to save my company and prove I'm not an erratic female executive." Elena grimaced. "It's been fun." A voice cut through their conversation. Victor appeared at her elbow, holding a glass of champagne. He looked Daniel up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Victor," Elena said coolly, "Daniel isn't my date. He's my friend. The driver." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've heard about you. The man who helped Elena with her episode." Her episode, Daniel repeated slowly, was making a smart decision. Something you might not recognize. Elena touched Daniel's arm lightly. A warning or support? She wasn't sure. Victor's smile sharpened. "Elena told me about your daughter. Asthma, right? That must be expensive. Hospital stays, medications. I imagine it's quite a strain on a driver's salary." "We manage," Daniel said. "I'm sure you do. With some help." Victor glanced at Elena. "I heard Elena covered those hospital bills. That was generous of her. Almost makes you wonder what she expected in return." The implication hung in the air like poison. "That's enough," Elena said sharply. But Daniel stepped forward, his voice low and controlled. "You know what your problem is? You can't imagine anyone doing something kind without an agenda, because that's how you operate. Everything's a transaction. Everything has a price. He looked directly at Victor. Elena helped my daughter because she's a good person. I didn't ask her to. She offered because she cares about people, not profit margins. That's something you'll never understand. A small crowd had gathered, sensing drama. Phones were out, though whether to record or just watch, Elena wasn't sure. Victor's face flushed. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're just some what? Elena interrupted, her voice cutting. Some poor person? Some single father struggling to take care of his daughter? Someone beneath your notice? She stepped between Victor and Daniel. Let me be very clear. Daniel has more integrity in one conversation than you've shown in 3 years of strategic partnership. He asked me what I wanted. You never did. Elena, you're making a scene. Good. I want witnesses. She raised her voice slightly, addressing the gathered crowd. For anyone wondering, yes, I ran from my wedding. Yes, I'm rebuilding my company on my own terms. And yes, I'm done with men who think women are assets to be acquired. Including you, Victor. She took Daniel's hand. Let's go. They walked out of the ballroom together, leaving whispers and phone cameras behind. Mrs. Chen followed, looking both shocked and delighted. Outside, in the cold winter air, Daniel started laughing. Did we just cause a scandal? Probably. Elena was grinning. Worth it? Completely. They stood under the lights of the hotel entrance, snow beginning to fall again. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw both the powerful CEO and the woman who'd made pancakes in his kitchen. I've missed you, he said simply. I've missed you too. Mia wants to know if you'll come to her school art show next week. She painted something she wants to show you. I'll be there. Elena squeezed his hand. And Daniel? I'm done hiding. From the press, from the board, from what I want. If that means dealing with more people like Victor, so be it. What do you want? That question again. The one that had started everything. I want to see where this goes, Elena said, gesturing between them. I want to know if what I felt in your apartment was real. I want to have breakfast with you and Mia without wondering if it's the last time. I want, she paused. I want to choose you. If you want to be chosen, Daniel kissed her. Right there, under the hotel lights, with snow falling and Mrs. Chen watching, and probably 50 phone cameras recording from the windows. He kissed her like he'd been wanting to for 3 weeks. When they pulled apart, Elena was crying and laughing at the same time. Is that a yes? She asked. That's a yes. 4 months later, spring arrived in North Haven. The snow melted. The streets cleared. Trees started budding. And Cross Industries announced a new initiative. The Frost Foundation, dedicated to providing healthcare support for families dealing with chronic childhood illnesses. Elena announced it at a press conference, standing at a podium with Daniel and Mia beside her. This foundation is personal, she told the gathered reporters. Several months ago, I watched a father face an impossible choice. Pay for his daughter's medical emergency or default on other bills. He shouldn't have had to make that choice. No parent should. She glanced at Daniel. The Frost Foundation will cover emergency medical costs, provide monthly medication stipends, and offer support services for families navigating chronic illness. Because healthcare is a right, not a privilege. The questions came rapid fire. Elena answered them calmly. Yes, this was inspired by personal experience. Yes, Daniel Frost was involved in the foundation's planning. Yes, she and Daniel were in a relationship. No, she wasn't concerned about the optics. For too long, Elena said, I made decisions based on what was expected rather than what was right. I'm done with that. This foundation is right. How I got here, including running from my own wedding, was right. And being with someone who reminds me every day to ask myself what I want? That's right, too. After the press conference, the 3 of them walked through the city park. Mia ran ahead, chasing pigeons, her breathing easy. She'd had only 2 minor asthma episodes all spring. Both managed quickly with medication that Elena's foundation had already helped provide to dozens of other families in trial runs. "You know, the board tried to shut this down," Elena said, linking her arm through Daniel's. "They called it irresponsible spending and emotionally motivated decision-making." "What did you say?" "I told them they were right. It is emotionally motivated. I'm motivated by the emotion of watching a 7-year-old struggle to breathe and knowing her father can't afford the treatment. If that makes me a bad CEO, I'll find a new job." "They kept you on." "Barely. I had to prove the foundation would also improve our public image and employee morale. Show them the business case for being a decent human being." She shook her head. "But we won. The foundation is real. It's happening." Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you're remarkable. I think you took a terrifying leap running away from that wedding and you turned it into something that's going to help thousands of people. I think you're exactly who you were meant to be." Elena's eyes shimmered. "I couldn't have done it without you. Without that morning in the parking lot. Without you asking me what I wanted. You did the hard part. I just drove the car. You did more than that. You reminded me that I'm allowed to choose, that my life is mine." Mia came running back, holding a flower she'd picked. "Miss Elena, Elena, look." Elena had asked Mia to drop the miss a month ago. It felt too formal for someone who now came over for dinner twice a week, who helped with homework, who'd attended Mia's art show and cried when she saw the painting of the 3 of them standing in the snow. "It's beautiful," Elena said, taking the flower. "Should we press it in a book?" "Yes, the one about the girl who talks to animals." They walked home together to Daniel's apartment, which Elena had helped winterize properly, including getting the landlord to finally fix the radiator. It was still small, still worn, but it was warm now. Safe. That evening, after Mia was in bed, Daniel and Elena sat on the couch, wrapped in Lila's purple blanket. Elena had her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. "I've been thinking," Daniel said quietly, about how different our lives are. You have corporate events and board meetings and a mansion somewhere, probably. I have a rented apartment and a 12-year-old car. Mia and I are. We're not your world." Elena sat up, turning to face him. "You're exactly my world. This apartment, these evenings with Mia, Sunday morning pancakes, this is the realest my life has ever felt. Everything else is just noise. This is the signal. But eventually nothing. I'm not going anywhere. Yes, I have responsibilities. Yes, there will be galas and meetings and corporate nonsense. But I'm coming home to this. To you. To us. If you'll have me." Daniel pulled her close. "I'll have you." Outside, the last of the winter snow was melting. Spring was coming. And for the first time since Leela died, Daniel felt like life was giving him permission to move forward, to be happy, to build something new. Elena fell asleep on his shoulder, her breathing even and peaceful. Daniel stayed awake a little longer, watching the streetlights outside, thinking about the bride in the parking lot who'd changed his entire world. He thought about the question that had started everything. "What do you want?" He knew his answer now. This. Exactly this. The North Haven Grand Hotel was hosting another wedding, but this time the bride wasn't running. Elena Cross stood in a simple white dress, nothing like the elaborate gown from a year ago, holding Mia's hand. The little girl wore a purple dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers. "Are you ready?" Mia asked seriously. "I'm ready," Elena said. They walked together through the hotel, not to a ballroom, but to the small garden in back, where snow had fallen exactly 1 year ago. Now it was spring, and everything was blooming. Daniel waited under an arch of flowers. He was wearing the same borrowed suit from the winter gala, and he was crying before Elena even reached him. "Hi," she said, taking his hands. The ceremony was short. A few words about choice and courage and love that asks what you want. About families built from unexpected moments. About being brave enough to jump, even when you can't see where you'll land. When they kissed, Mia cheered loudly. Mrs. Chen sobbed. The 30 guests, mostly Daniel's neighbors, a few board members who'd come around, and Elena's assistant Marcus applauded. There was no merger, no business agreements, no strategic alignment, just two people who'd found each other in a parking lot during a snowstorm, and a little girl who'd taught them both that families come in all forms. Later, at the small reception, Victor Hale sent a gift basket with a note. "Congratulations on your happiness." It was professional, distant, exactly what Elena expected. She didn't open the basket. She was too busy dancing with her husband and daughter, laughing as Mia stepped on their feet, feeling the spring sun on her face. Someone asked if she regretted running from her first wedding. Elena looked at Daniel, at Mia, at the life they'd built from one moment of terrified courage. "Not even a little bit," she said, and she meant it.